continue with Ralph Waldo Emerson, or Rafe as they would call him in England, who was Henry David Thoreau's teacher, and he was the leader of the Transcendentalist movement in the 19th century America. Today he is considered to be the most thought-provoking essayist of his time. Let's see who this man actually was. He started his career by being a Unitarian minister or a priest. Unitarianism is a creed in Christianity which explains the Holy Trinity and says that God in Christianity consists of only one thing, that God is not the Holy Trinity consisting of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, but that God is only one entity. So Waldo Emerson believed in Unitarianism for much of his life, but when his wife died, he started developing religious doubts, and he was forced by himself, of course, to resign the pastorate and to question everything around him. So he went to Europe to study there, and he spent some 10 months in Europe. And when he returned to America, he found this new system of lecturing emerging. It was called the Lyceum. It's a kind of an institution where many famous philosophers and authors would have lectures on different people. Emerson's lectures were very famous, and eventually many of those lectures were published. For example, these as a book which described Representative Men, 7 lectures about famous people of the past, some of which include Plato, Shakespeare, and Goethe. In 1836, Emerson published his famous pamphlet called Nature, and this is how it came to being. He fought against the same things as Henry David Thoreau. He was against the materialistic approach to life. He criticized the American dream, the concept of the American dream, and he criticized religion as well. And with all these things, he offended the Americans for the most part. He was especially against slavery in the same vein as Thoreau and Longfellow. And this is how, in the 1850s, his struggle against slavery developed, and he became a Republican at some point. So he started supporting Abraham Lincoln, who, as you know, is credited as the president who abolished slavery. And when Lincoln was assassinated, Emerson thought of him and considered him to be a martyr. He, at the same time, developed his philosophy of Transcendentalism by claiming that we consist of a soul which has to be united with the mystic oversoul. The oversoul guides the universe. So, as you can see in this slide, there is a mystic oversoul with which each individual soul should try to harmonize. The way to do this was through nature. So instead of seeing God as a Christian God, he now sees God as existing in a nature of which we should become part. He also believed that the Americans lack their own identity, and this is what he also criticized. And he believed that they had to invent and develop an indigenous American national culture, which means that they should include many different voices coming also from the indigenous people of America. So this is how his pamphlet Nature slowly came into being, by relating all these things in his education and studying both abroad and in America. He published it in 1836, and just by comparison, Waldo was published in 1854, so almost 2 decades after this essay. So Emerson was the first to speak about Transcendentalism in America. This is why we say he is the leader and the founder of this movement on that North American continent. So finding God through nature. Let us read one excerpt to show you just what this means. To go into solitude, a man needs to retire as much from his chamber as from his society. I am not solitary whilst I read and write, though nobody is with me. But if a man would be alone, let him look at the stars. Dakle, ova podeljena rečenica znači ako čovjek zaista želi da bude sam, pustite ga da gleda u zvezde. Seen in the streets of cities how great they are. If the stars should appear one night in 1,000 years, how would men believe and adore and preserve for many generations the remembrance of the city of God which had been shown? But every night come out these envoys of beauty and light the universe with their admonishing smile. So basically, this means that because we are used to seeing the stars every night, because we know they're in the sky when we look up, we do not appreciate the stars as we should. But if the stars were to be shown only once in 1,000 years, then we would come to appreciate their existence. It basically employs the technique of the estrangement. To bi bilo ono oneobičavanje na srpskom jeziku, koje su toliko potencirali naročito modernisti, a kasnije i postmodernisti. So being able to see things as though for the first time. So being able to see things as children, and this is what William Wordsworth also wanted in his poetry. So in order to do that, we have to return to nature and to start seeing things as though we have never seen them before. So this is what Transcendentalism in his terms mean. But Transcendentalism is a term which is very elusive and not many people can truly understand it. For example, Nathaniel Hawthorne in his story The Celestial Railroad makes fun of the term by saying the following. He is German by birth and is called a giant transcendentalist, but as to his form, his features, his substance, and his nature generally, it is the chief peculiarity of this huge miscreant that neither he for himself nor anybody for him has ever been able to describe them. So instead of defining what transcendentalism is, Hawthorne mocks the very term by calling a transcendentalist a miscreant, which means a very strange creature, which nobody knows how to describe. So this term was actually adopted from German philosophy. I'm sure you have heard of Immanuel Kant, who spoke about transcendental idealism. This part of branch of his philosophy is also very obscure, and not many people understand what Kant actually meant by transcendental idealism. However, Emerson took the term to mean something entirely different. As you can see in this slide, this is the difference. Kant said that reason is necessary to know the reality, whereas Emerson said intuition is necessary to know the spiritual reality. So there are two differences here. First, between reason and intuition. In Emerson's opinion, intuition is more important. And secondly, Emerson differentiates between the reality as we know it and another reality, which is spiritual. So there is another reality above this reality that we can perceive. So in American Transcendentalism, following Emerson's previous vocation of being a Unitarian priest, we can say that in America, this movement was more religious than philosophical as in Germany. So it is connected to finding God, and this is why it's religious, it's not philosophy at all. So in Emerson's studies, he says we need a mystical spiritual union between the not me and the me, between nature and the soul. Ako ste ikada učili filozofiju, onda se verovatno sećate tih termina biće, ne biće. Filozofija je jako teška nauka za savladavanje i za razumevanje, ali ona je isto tako inspirativna jer nas navodi da razmišljamo o svakoj rečenici koja je izgovorena, a filozofija zapravo objašnjava kako funkcioniše svijet, a samim tim i sam čovjek. So the problem here is to transcend the me and to unite the me with the not me. So how should we unite these two separate beings? How do you unite your soul with nature? Well, by transcending your soul and your physical, real being. In order to illustrate this, more, I have some excerpts from their works, and I will just say that Emerson, Thoreau, and Whitman, as the leading transcendentalists, all focused on three different senses to describe what to transcend means. Emerson focused on seeing, so he focused on the sight. And I will read an excerpt from the pamphlet Nature. In the woods, we return to reason and faith. There I feel that nothing can befall me in life, no disgrace, no calamity, leaving me my eyes, which nature cannot repair. Ovo u zagradi leaving me my eyes zapravo znači da ga u prirodi ništa ne može zadesiti loše ukoliko može da i dalje vidi. Dakle, potreban mu je vid da bi mogao da se spoji sa prirodom. Standing on the bare ground, my head bathed by the blithe air and uplifted into infinite space, all mean egotism vanishes. I become a transparent eyeball. I am nothing. I see all. The currents of the universal being circulate through me. I'm part or particle of God. This is a very famous phrase, when you become a transparent eyeball. So this is the way to transcend yourself and unite with the not me, which is located somewhere in a different reality. So this is what is difficult to understand, how to overcome your physical being and unite your soul with nature. For Emerson, it is by trying to really see nature as though for the first time. For Henry David Thoreau, however, the sense he focuses on is hearing. So this is an excerpt from the chapter from Waldo called Sounds. It goes like this. As the sparrow had its trill, sitting on the hickory before my door, so had I my chuckle or suppressed warble which he might hear out of my nest. My nest refers to his cabin on Waldo Pond, and here he describes different voices or sounds with which the sparrow announces his arrival. My days were not days of the week, bearing the stamp of any heathen deity, nor were they minced into hours and fretted by the ticking of a clock. For I lived like the Puri Indians, of whom it is said that for yesterday, today, and tomorrow they have only one word, and they express the variety of meaning by pointing backward for yesterday, forward for tomorrow, and overhead for the passing day. If you remember, Thoreau, while he was staying in Walden, he wanted to live as simple as possible, so this is why he engages the language also to illustrate this. And finally, for Whitman, the sense he focuses on is touch. This is an excerpt from Song of Myself. I mind how once we lay such a transparent summer morning. I mind, Rachi Sechamson, how you settled your head athwart my hips and gently turned over upon me, and parted the shirt from my bosom bone, and plunged your tongue to my bare stripped heart, and reached till you felt my beard, and reached till you held my feet. I hope you can recognize the sexual images that appear here, because in Whitman's world, his transcendentalism is completely different. He focuses more on the physical world, whereas Thoreau and Emerson believe in the spiritual world, and that is the more important reality for the two of them. This is why Whitman was the most controversial of the three, and you will hear something about him in my next video. For example, this claim. He says, I think Swedenborg was right when he said there was a close connection between the state we call religious ecstasy and the desire to copulate. The desire to copulate is actually the sex drive. So he thinks that only by touching and having sex with somebody or some kind of a sexual union can we become one with God. And this is what made him so infamous in all of the literary circles in the 19th century America.